Historical Society's project on the neighborhoods of Newport, Rhode Island. And it's February 17th, 1984, and my narrator is Helen Harpin. Helen, would you start telling me about your family? First, where you were born.
Where I was born? Newport, Rhode Island.
At home, in the hospital?
At home at 25 Rhode Island Avenue. And my mother's name?
Not yet.
No.
I'm going to get down to your mother's name because what I want to know is where were your parents born?
Oh, my mother was born. Well, both my parents were born in Newport. My mother's parents came from Ireland. And my father's family has been in Newport for generations.
You want to tell me about the Hazard background at all?
I don't really know that much about it to really go into it. I mean, I know that they had been here for generations. My grandfather was a cabinet maker and also a butcher. His father was a cabinet maker. He was Simeon Hazard, who was a cabinet maker. And they were, they had a place, I think, down on Church Street. It was years and years ago. That's not mine.
It's doing all right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see this going on, but we're doing all right. I think I'll stop it just a minute there. We're fine. What did your father do?
My father was one of the owners of the Newport Herald.
And would you tell me about the newspaper, because I know there is none with that name now.
No, that was started way back in the late 1800s. And my father bought it, I would say, around 1905, 1906, with Leander K. Carr and Stephen Buckley were his partners. And it was a morning newspaper. And it was printed 6 days a week, morning. And it went until, I think, he closed about 1945. 1944, 45. Right during the war, when they could no longer get, it was very hard getting paper. They couldn't get any help. And so, rather than print a inferior newspaper, he closed. Both his partners had died. He was the sole owner at that time.
Did he sell it out?
He sold it to a man by the name of Brandt, but I don't know, it was from out of town, and he only ran it for a very short while after that, and then it closed.
I had always thought that the Daily News somehow or other, I guess they just took over as being
No, they
only
didn't,
the one that didn't have
never
anything.
had anything to do with that at all.
Had your father ever done anything except this newspaper work?
That was it. That was his whole life. He worked nights for about 40 years to get this newspaper out, and also, he was a society editor too here in Newport for the New York Times and for several Boston papers. I can't remember which ones.
I can remember the New York Times Society.
And I think he probably knew more about Newport society as it was in those days than most people here in Newport did.
Did he ever bring any of those stories home to the family? Incidental little
No,
things?
no, he was, I think that's why he was so well liked, because he was close-mouthed.
Mm-hmm.
And very rarely did he ever talk about it. He had a lot of notes and things, but when he died, my mother gave them all to Gardner Dunton. Do you remember
Yes.
Gardner Dunton? And he took over as he worked for the Journal. He worked for my father years before. When he first came here, he went to work for the Newport Herald, and then he went with the Fireman's Journal.
Well, now, I wonder what happened to Gardner Dunton's things, whether this all should have gone into the Newport Historical Society archives. I wonder what happened to the Dunton thing.
I have no idea. I often thought of when I talked to Gardner, of asking him about them, but then I never did. It's just one of those things that you just don't. Now, what happened to Gardner's things, I don't know, because Gardner died here several years ago. Whether his daughter gave the things back to the Journal, I don't know. But there were a lot of things there that probably would have been of value.
Of course, we think anything is of value. That's why we're running this oral history. Did your mother do anything outside of the house in the way of an...
Not after she was married. She was a registered nurse. And she graduated from Presbyterian Hospital in New York. In 1906.
Let's establish her maiden name for the
Mahan.
record.
Charlotte Mahan.
And you said it was her parents that were Irish.
Yeah.
And she lived in New York
Uh,
up to the time of her coming here as a nurse?
oh, no. They came here. Her father came over to this country as a gardener, head gardener for a family by the name of Lowe, who lived around on Ridge Road. That house has since been torn down. And they were brought up over there on Ridge Road, the whole family. And I think he came over first, and then my grandmother and one son, John Mahan, who was later Alderman Mahan here in Newport. And also he was the superintendent of the Island Cemetery for many years. And then after they came over, they lived over there on Ridge Road, and that's where all the other children were born. I think there were 5 or 6 of them.
In a cottage.
In a little tiny cottage. How they ever got in there, I don't know. But they did. And that was the gardener's cottage. And then my grandfather, whom I never knew, he was drowned over there on the bay down off, I think they had some sort of a dock, and he fell off the dock and hit his head and was drowned. And this was about around 1900, I guess. And then after that, my mother went to New York and went training in Presbyterian Hospital.
And then came back
And then
to
came
practice nursing.
no, she practiced in New York. After she graduated, I think she worked at the hospital and then she did private nursing. And then she also, when she came back here, or she was married, worked for several doctors here in town. But after she was married, she never worked.
Can you tell me approximately the years that they were married?
Yeah, they were married in 1910. And my father died in 1946. She died in 1963.
When did they come to this house?
1914.
And you don't mind telling us when you were born.
1911.
So, since 1911, this has been your home.
Well, I was born over there on Rhode Island Avenue where they lived. That was my grandmother's and grandfather, his mother and father's home. They had a little apartment there. And then they built this house and moved in 1914.
Have you any brothers and sisters?
No.
What did your family enjoy doing together as a whole family? You said your father worked at night. I suppose there wasn't very much family
Very little.
togetherness.
Very little, unfortunately.
And you, as an only child, I suppose your mother and you were close?
To a point, yes. Yes, we were. We did. I went a lot of places with her as a child. But we probably weren't as close as we should have been. I was not close to my father because I didn't see him that often. And then, like if I went out, for instance, in the evening, I'd see him at dinner time. But then if I went out in the evening, he'd be gone when I came home. And I'd be gone when he got up. He got up around 11 in the morning. And that's it.
It was definitely not the 9-to-5 father that goes off to work with a steam whistle.
Oh, heavens, no.
When you went out to play, we want to establish this neighborhood. Where did you play?
Just around in the neighborhood.
The children that you played with, if you played outside, were of this neighborhood, or did they have to come to see you?
About the only ones that I can remember that I used to play with were the Bellmans up on Wesley Street. There was Anna Bellman, who is now Ann McLaughlin. There was her brother, Frank, whom they called Sonny, and Emily and Elizabeth. Emily and Elizabeth were older than I. Ann and Sonny were younger, but we all sort of played together, and there was a whole bunch of children up there on Wesley Street. Their names I don't remember.
When did you start going to school?
And how old was I?
Mm-hmm.
Probably 5.
Where did you go?
Cranston. There used to be Cranston and Calvert. And I did go to preschool. So, Bennett, Mrs. Bennett's up on Brinley Street. I went to her school for, I guess, a couple of years before, because I never went to kindergarten down here. I think I started in the 2nd grade, if I remember. That was a long time ago.
How many years did one go to Cranston and Calvert before going on to
Well,
another
I went up
school?
there through the 8th grade, and then I went to the 9th grade over at Mumford School, which is over on Farewell Street. And about 2 years later, the 9th grade was dropped. I think my husband went to the last class of the 9th grade. And then from there I went to Rogers, graduated from Rogers in 1929. Yeah. And then I went to Pembroke College in town, Brown University.
That was quite unusual for any of the graduates of the Rogers of that time, going off to a women's college, Ivy League. Why did you choose to go to Pembroke? Did your family discuss with you what your future should be?
No.
Why did you go off to a women's college?
Well, and I don't really know. I guess it was because I wanted to go away to school. I wanted to go to college. They wanted me to go to college, and that was probably one of the only reasons that I did. I wanted to better my education too. Also, everybody thought that I was going to follow in my mother's footsteps and become a nurse. And in no way would I ever become a nurse. I couldn't stand it. To this day, I can't stand being around sick people.
So what did you major in at Pembroke?
Biology.
Well, that would have prepared you. When did you, that is what you got a degree in?
That's what I got a degree in, yeah. And then I worked over here in the, couple of summers I worked in the hospital lab over here with Mary Franklin. Just to get some experience. But I really never did anything with it after that.
Then did you go on to any other kinds of education?
You mean,
take any more courses?
not in biology, no. No, I think that was the reason that I didn't, because at that point I had had enough of school, and in order to get a decent job in a lab or something, you had to go on and get your master's, which I wasn't too interested in at that point. And then several years later, I got into social work, which was a far cry from biology.
And that you learned by yourself?
Yep. You did not have to have any degree in those days. That, I think, was 1935, I guess.
What did you do besides having fun, what did you do between the time that you were working
you were going to ask me that.
in the lab until you were married?
Oh, until I was married. I wasn't married until 1942. I worked, well, when I first got out of college, a friend of mine and I went to New York. We lived in New York for about a year. And I worked
Most people do it Macy's, but you didn't go to Macy's?
I worked at Stern. I worked at Saks.
And then decided to come
I
home.
had enough of that, so then I came back home. Oh yes, and then oh no, then I worked for a short while for a detective agency in New York, but that didn't last very long. That was too much.
Now, have we gotten up to the Depression? Yes,
Oh,
we're in
Depression
the
is over.
worst of the Depression
35.
in New York, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's probably why you couldn't get a real good job down there except as a clerk in a store, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I had a lot of fun there. But then I came back here, and then I went to work in Providence for a knitting shop, and I for about a year teaching knitting, which I loved. But then I got a good job with the National Youth Administration, which was a government agency. And we, what did we do? Well, they had these different places all around Providence for the underprivileged children to come in after school, get them off the streets.
Instead of a Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, they didn't have those then. And they had, they teach knitting, they teach cooking, and they had all these different people that would, and then the boys, they would teach woodworking. I mean, it was more or less like Boys and Girls Clubs, I suppose, but it was run by the government. And I worked nights. I worked there. I used to work I think from about 3:30 to 11.
And how did you commute?
I didn't. I lived in Providence. And you'd go from, 1 week you'd be at one place. They had them, most of these places were in the basements of schools all around Providence. And then it was a good job.
Was that when you began to be interested in doing social
Probably.
work?
Probably.
And you handled the children, you liked that?
Yeah. But then after that, then I got a job with the state of Rhode Island social work.
Was that still in Providence?
Oh yeah, that was in Providence then, and that was when old age assistance first started back in about 1936, 37. And I worked with the old people, and they were just applying for old age assistance.
I had forgotten about that.
See? And I worked in Providence, and then they took over both old age assistance and age-dependent children. I mean, it sort of all started to become one agency. And from there I went down to, I worked in Barrington, Swan, and Bristol until I left. That's where I was when the hurricane came in 1938.
We will come to that when we get on that subject. I think we've covered your education, and we're now going to go on to religion. Did your parents have any religion?
Yeah, they were Presbyterian.
The Irish part of your mother's family had
They
been
were-
Protestant?
Yeah, from the north of Ireland.
How did the family spend the Sabbath?
They weren't too overly religious. My grandmother was, and my father's mother. She was a great churchgoer. I think my father went maybe Easter and Christmas. My mother went occasionally. I went to Sunday school.
And that was your neighborhood parish?
Yeah, St. George's.
And how far from the house was that?
It's on the next street.
During those Sunday school years, did you encounter more of the neighborhood children? Did it enlarge your
No.
knowledge
No.
of the neighborhood as far as the young people
No.
went?
Because most of them weren't in this neighborhood. That they were sort of spread out. When we first moved here, across the street was a big open lot. I mean, it was not built up the way it is now. There were several big houses around. Well, I can't because you can't hear that. Across the street from us was a great big estate owned by a family by the name of Gray. And I don't remember them. I do remember that they had these beautiful carriages that used to come up. I can just barely remember these carriages that they had this porte-cochere there, and they'd come up and the lovely ladies would get out and go in the house. It was a big sprawling place. And they left. I don't know whether, I guess they sold the place. Whether they lost their money or not, I don't know. And during World War I, that was Navy nurses' home. And they used to bring the nurses over in the ambulances on their different shifts over here. And then next door to us was a big house where the justice of the Rhode Island court lived, Judge Darius Baker and his family lived. And there were big open lots. That was an open lot next door to us. Across the street was a great big open lot where you lived in.
And you can remember those
I remember those.
houses being built.
Being built, sure. Oh yeah. That's when I was, still living here when I was small. And then that house that I was mentioning, the Gray Estate, after World War I, it was idle for many years, and then it was bought and divided. And to this day, there are still 3 houses over there that are part of the original house.
I remembered seeing those being moved down the street. And I argued that it was the house further up at Aralt Street that I had seen, and it was not, I was wrong, it was across here.
No, you didn't see those, and I beg to differ. You didn't see those being moved down the street because those were, the original parts of those houses were not moved. What you saw being moved down the street were houses from Central Street, where they moved to build the extension of Rogers High School. Oh, I don't know though. You couldn't have done because you wouldn't have been here then. I don't know what you saw being moved down the street.
It's something that's down in Gibbs Avenue or
On
Eustis now.
Hunter Avenue.
And maybe down as far as Gibbs, one piece of it.
Could be.
And whose house do you think? And that was from Central Street, you think?
Yeah, I think those were from Central Street.
Well, I think we've got to go to the city hall and find out about
so
that.
Too. Yeah. But no, these houses, the Grays, those were never moved. One part of that house was torn down. It was divided originally into 4 pieces, 4 separate houses. The house directly across the street from us had a fire, and that was torn down. And another house was built there, which is the present one now. But the 2 up above that are still the original parts of the Gray estate. And the one next door to this one over here is the original part. That was the original kitchen, which has been added onto a lot. I mean, it doesn't look like it did then, but it's on the original foundation. Up there, what they call the Gray Terrace, which are now condominiums, that was an old barn up in Maine. And there are now, they made that into about 6 different condominiums. But as I remember it, that was an old, that was a barn where they used to keep their horses and carriages.
It's always interesting in Newport how a building has been made over and made over and goes on decade after decade in another way. We would like to talk just a little bit about our neighborly relations. Did your mother have friends in the neighborhood that she ran in and out with?
Yes, Mrs. Baker. She and Mrs. Baker were very, very close. They were always in and out of each other's home. Yes, my husband's father worked there. I didn't know them at the time. I didn't know him too well at the time. He worked there, I think, until it closed after the war. Which is not going.
Do you remember the hardships that occurred as they closed down the torpedo station later? Or were you out of town then?
I don't remember when that was closed. It was closed right after the war, wasn't it? Right after 45, 46. I don't remember too much about it.
Were you in Newport during VJ Day?
Yes. That was in August, wasn't it? Yes. Yes, I remember we were all out at a friend of ours' camp, and there was a friend of mine was visiting me from New York, whose husband also was with my husband in Germany when we got the word that was VJ Day. And the one thing I remember that night after that word came, this was the place where we were visiting, was a camp, and it was right down under Mount Hope Bridge out in Portsmouth.
and the lights came on the bridge. It was the most thrilling, and you couldn't even talk, really, when you saw those lights come on for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so. They put them all on. It was just the most beautiful sight you ever saw in your life. And then we all came into town, and we went down on Washington Square, and there was a tremendous celebration. But my husband didn't come home for, quite a while after that.
Had you lost friends up to that time in the war?
Several boys that I knew that I went to college with were killed. Another friend of mine in Providence, he was also killed. I won't go into that.
I think that you told me that you were not in Newport during that 1938 hurricane. Where were you?
I was working in Bristol, and that morning it had been raining quite hard, and we all went to work. There were two of us that worked out of Providence, that lived in Providence and worked in Bristol. And about 3 o'clock, we generally didn't leave till about 5, and about 3 o'clock our boss told us maybe we'd better leave because the storm was getting worse. And it was normally about a 20-minute drive from my office in Bristol to where I lived on the east side in Providence. And it took me, I think, 3.5 hours going around tree stumps and tree branches, and I was one of the last cars that they let over Red Bridge going into Providence from East Providence. The water then was up to our hubcaps coming over the bridge. And that was a bit scary.
That was the only way into East Providence, wasn't it?
Well, no,
195, what kind of bridge was there?
There was what they call the Old Red Bridge, which is no longer there.
No, but it's down Waterman Street,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So but that was the only way to get into Providence?
Oh, no, you could get into Providence from Washington, over Washington Street Bridge, if you wanted to go that way. But this was a much shorter way of coming into East Providence, to coming from East Providence into Providence, where I lived. Because I lived up on the east side.
Well, now, when you got home and undid yourself from being so frightened with the drive, did it occur to you to find out what was happening in Newport?
Not right at that time, no, because we still didn't realize that it was a hurricane. And of course then you had no television. You had you had a radio, yes, but I think they were all mostly plug-in radios. And by that time, I guess the electricity probably had gone off. Oh, I do remember parking in front of my house, and there was a garage on the next street, and the branches were coming down. They were small branches were coming down all around the cars. And so I decided, I think I will go and put my car in that garage. And I got out and got over and got into the garage and came back. And right where my car was parked, there was a big tree right across the road.
Could have hit you when you were in the car.
It could have. It could have. And then that night, then of course we realized that it was. I lived in a house with. Well, I had a room, and it was a sort of a rooming house, and there were 4, 5 girls. We had a joint kitchen. Marvelous place to live. Paid $6 a week. Kitchen privileges, everything. And I think nowadays that room probably would rent for $100, if not more. Anyway, that night, one of the girls and myself walked through the tunnel. There was a tunnel, a trolley car tunnel from the east side, went down into the center of Providence. And of course there were no trolley cars then, and everybody was walking through the tunnel. And we walked downtown. We were curious, along with everybody else. We walked down and got as far as the end of the tunnel, and that was about as far as you could go. There was water everywhere. And I remember, and still to this day, I can't stand hearing a car horn blowing, because all these cars were underwater, and the horns were all blowing. And it was just like a continuous siren blowing. And of course a lot of these people were trapped in those cars. There were quite a few deaths in Providence, in the center of Providence, where people had gotten trapped and drowned.
And it must have been very soon after that they put the barriers up that are supposed to keep that water from ever arriving down there.
I don't think they did that until after wasn't there a 52 hurricane?
Yeah.
Which I wasn't around here at that time, but a 52 or 54, I don't think they put them up until then. They just figured that it would never happen again, It was just a quirk that it happened then.
Well, now tell me, did your family suffer any?
No, outside of losing one beautiful big red beach down in the foot of our yard. And the beach that we lost here last year, my mother had told me, she said she watched that come up. Sure, the roots came up and then it went back again, then it would come up again and go back. But fortunately that held. But the big beach in the back of the yard, that went over into the next yard. Demolished the garage next door, and only about 6 inches was taken off our garage. We went right through the garage next door. It was a beautiful big copper beach.
I suppose that was the beginning of not the elm disease, but I guess a great many of the elms too must have gone at that time.
Yeah, I guess so.
You don't think of the beaches as uprooting that way.
Mm-mm.
And your father probably never came home from the paper, but that was run by electricity at that point.
Sure, I don't know. I don't remember how they. I know the telephones. For some strange reason, I think you could still call, because I think I remember calling that night to see if they were all right. And then this friend of mine who I went downtown Providence with, her family lived in Whitford, I think. And she could not get in touch with them. She did, because Whitford was very badly damaged. She was so worried, and she hitchhiked the next day down to Whitford. She worked at Brown University. And she hitchhiked down, because she didn't have a car down there. But fortunately, they were all right.
As I remember hearing, the next day, as it always is at the end of a hurricane, was a beautiful
Beautiful
September day.
September day was perfectly gorgeous.
All that awful debris to
Yeah.
have to clean up.
You couldn't get anyway. We couldn't get down. I don't think I could get down to Bristol until the following day. I could not get down there that day, and we were all told that we should try to get down to where we were working to see if anybody was, in need or anything. And I think I finally got down there the following day. All the clients that I had were all right. The water in Bristol came up. There was a place called Water Street. I think it came way up there. And there was a lot of damage, of course, some trees and everything like there was everywhere else. But fortunately, there was no loss of life. And then from there, we were sent down to South County where there was so much damage, so much loss of life. And we worked all down through South County. I guess I was down there for maybe 2 weeks, commuting back and forth. And you'd go on the street and you'd see these hearses going along. It got so that it was a common sight to see them because there was quite a lot of loss of life down through there.
Of course, Jamestown had its
Jamestown
tragedy.
had a lot. And here in Newport, there were several people drowned down here at Newport Beach, going down to see what was going on. There was a priest that was killed down there. I think he went down to help people when he himself was drowned. I don't remember his name. And there were several other people that were drowned. Because there was this tidal wave that came in and completely demolished Newport Beach. Were you here at the time?
No. I had left Jamestown a week before.
Your family, were they
Yes.
there?
My father knew it was going to be a hurricane
He did know.
because he had a barometer,
I kept going.
and he said it would be, and a few people that he spoke to said, absolutely impossible. We don't
Yeah.
have hurricanes here. And, the roof of our cottage blew off. The jazz festival that came in about 1960. Were you here at that time?
1960. Yes, I was here then.
Were you here during that the bad jazz festival? I think that was the one at Peabody Park. I think there was another one later, wasn't there, out at Festival Field?
Yes, where they tore down all the fences, and that was the last they ever had here. Yeah. Well, they had the jazz festival here for a number of years. But the one that was, you're talking about the one that had the riot, where they stopped. Yes, I was here then. We got into part of the riot by just being out of curiosity, going down to see what was going on. A couple of our friends got into the tear gas, but other than that, we didn't get our way down there. We saw them loading a lot of them onto the, what do they call them, the paddy wagons.
But it was quite a terrifying
Oh, it was.
experience.
It really was. It was. I mean, you weren't sure when you got down in there whether you should have been down there or not. You just felt, well, maybe we shouldn't have gone down. But we did.
Was there any commotion by the time you got home? Any commotion along K Street?
No.
Because I believe some of the streets did have people running, didn't they, or not?
I don't remember whether they did or not. I know when I got home, because I had children at the time, and my mother was minding them, and she had heard about this riot, and she was quite worried. But I don't think there was too much. Yeah, and during the festivals, you would see people going up and down K Street. But I don't think they ever had one after that, did they, after the riot? That bad riot. I think that was the end of it down in Freebody Park.
And then they went down
Then they went to
field.
Festival Field, and they didn't fare much better down there because everybody would just come into town and just for a big weekend, and I think then the drugs got into it, and then they pulled down all these fences, and there was, I guess, a near riot out there.
It was a bad, those 60s and early 70s, it was just sort of a bad time. Now, I don't know how appealing it is over at the state Fort Adams with no liquor and in the daytime. But they've done it now twice.
2 years, and they seem to have gotten quite a lot of an audience over there. I think the ones who come now come to enjoy the music, whereas the other ones came to enjoy themselves and just raise whatever cane they could. And it was a bad element, a lot of them were. But I think a lot of that had to do with drugs. How'd you get in?
And I guess alcohol. Unless you include alcohol in that. Speaking of alcohol, did Prohibition in any way, or the repeal of Prohibition in any way, affect you?
Not really.
I
I went to school during Prohibition. Prohibition was over, I think, when I was a senior in college. The 3.2 beer came in. I think that was my first taste of beer.
Not the last.
Not the last, no.
Did you have, that was the college age, did you have friends that had problems with alcohol during the Prohibition period?
Not that I remember. I think at all that probably at the fraternity dances there was always maybe a bottle or two around upstairs or someplace. But that was all Prohibition liquor. Some of it wasn't too good.
Did you hear stories about the smuggling and the rum running in Newport?
Oh yeah. You heard stories about it, how, but it was also hushed up. But, and as I say, I wasn't around here too much at the time, so. But you didn't hear too much about it.
Now, when did your father's newspaper, when did the Herald stop being published?
1945. Right almost at the end of the war.
So some of the things that you read in the papers.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But there are Newporters that have wonderful memories of parts of rum running.
Oh, I'm sure they
smuggling,
do. I'm sure they
and,
do.
The places that you could buy liquor that you would not have known about, the speakeasies.
Not here in Newport. My mother was a teetotaler, and there was no liquor in the house. My father was not. But he did not drink in the house. But I don't think I ever knew of a newspaper man who didn't take a drink or two. He enjoyed it.
After repeal, still there was none in the house.
No.
Had she come from a problem? One of her Irish forebears overdid it.
That I couldn't tell you.
That often happens.
I know it does. I know it does. But her whole family is just going to go into the thing.
It sounds nice on the tape.
Her whole family were dead set against liquor.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting because you said that they were Episcopalians who never had any feeling against a little wine or a little spirits. You definitely weren't living in the part of town where the bootleggers were, so you wouldn't have known about them. And repeal didn't really make any difference to you. Except that I suppose by that time you did start to have a social drink that you might not have done during the time of Prohibition.
Oh, besides during Prohibition, I was not of age. Didn't you
I
have
don't
to
think
be
that made.
21 or-
I don't think that made any.
No, of course it didn't
difference
then. No, that's right. It was
nobody.
Prohibition, so
Yeah,
no one was to
no,
drink.
no. Tell me about the Fall River boat. What it meant to you? Did you take trips on the Fall River boat?
Oh yeah.
Can you?
I used to go down when I was a child. Go to New York of a weekend with my mother and father when he could get the time off. But we always went down on the New York boat.
Tell me some of your memories of the going down and the coming back, because that's something that the future is not going to know about.
I know. Oh dear.
Did you make these festive trips on any particular occasion, or was it just when the
Just when
family
he could get time off, we would go to New York. My mother had friends and used to have friends in New York, because having trained there and lived there, and she just loved to go back, and maybe once a year, twice a year, maybe. We would go down. We'd stay
go
in a
to the
hotel.
theater,
Oh yes,
for
we'd go
one
to
of
the
those
theater,
days.
and probably cost us all of $5 a piece, maybe going to the theater then,
If that.
if that. I think the New York boat, I don't think that was more than, what, $2 a piece? Two or
It
three?
had to be more
Maybe
than that.
5. It wasn't too much more, Emily. It was about maybe $5 a piece. And you'd go in, you'd get your stateroom. And you left here, I think, at 9 o'clock at night. And then in the morning, I remember going under all these bridges coming into New York, and my mother pointing out all the different big high buildings in New York to me. And then when you came back, you come back at 5 o'clock. Time for dinner, you had your dinner on the boat. We always hoped it would be the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth had the dining room up on the top where you could look out. The others were all down below. and there were these New York. Well, it had when you came into sort of a great big, very ornate lobby, and there was this big staircase going up to the staterooms. The staterooms were all around. Well, it was like a second floor, open second floor, where there was these railings where you could look down onto this lobby and see all these people sitting around the lobby. And very often, if we went down in the summer, there'd be some of the summer people would be going down. They'd all have these parties on board, which I thought was just great, being a child of about 7 or 8, and their beautiful clothes. That's about all I remember about it. I know I was sorry to see it go, but I guess it was a losing proposition after the war. I guess it went before the war, didn't it? I don't remember. I don't remember when they stopped in New York. Yes, it had to, because I think that dock was taken over by the Navy.
I think it had stopped before that because of some strikes.
Mm-hmm. It used to be when I was in school here, when I was in high school, it used to be a great thing to go down and watch the New York boat go out. I mean, that was one of our pastimes, to go down and see the boat take off. Very innocent pastime.
But it did look beautiful
But it
going
was
out
so
too.
beautiful.
If you were farther down south on the island to see the lights going
Yeah,
by.
that's right.
It was a very, very gala sort of
It was.
life.
And a nice life.
The coming back wasn't so good in New York.
Well, you had to get off at 3 o'clock in the morning. But then you could also, which I think we used to do, you could go on to Fall River and take the train down from Fall River in the morning.
Stay on to 7 or 8.
Yeah, which I think we used to do that. When I worked in New York, I used to come back. That was in the 30s, and I'd come back on the New York boat. My father would meet me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd go back on the boat. So it was so easy travel, unless you ran into a storm or something. I don't ever remember running into.
I think they always ran. I think that was one of
did.
the.
They did.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was definitely a life that is gone. Did you know anybody that was interested in the actual steamship line?
No. I think when my father was a youngster, maybe in high school, I think he used to work down for the Fall River line. Worked in one of the offices down there. But I don't remember anything about that. I mean, I don't remember him talking about it. I know that he did work there.
Well, it was a very important shop place for the whole steamship line.
Oh, I know. I think it was the main shop, wasn't it?
Well, now that gets us to the Depression. When the stock market crashed in late 1929, you had started Pembroke. Did that affect any of the students? Did it affect you?
Actually, it didn't affect me too much. We just went on. I think my father being in the type of work that he was in, it really, it didn't do too much. He was not one for playing the stock market, so fortunately that didn't. I think maybe he lost a little bit in the market, but very little, nothing that would affect him. Yes, several of my friends I know didn't come back the following January, I guess, the following second semester. But other than that, it really didn't bother me that much.
The young boys who had gone to school with you, who hadn't gone to college, this is at Rogers, I wonder how many of them had a terribly difficult time getting a job.
I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe I should, maybe I should know, but I think at that age you're sort of in your own world.
If it doesn't affect you personally,
that's right. That's right.
And you may actually not have been aware of how many people were suffering in other parts of town from loss of job. You were saying that the summer colony were really the ones that suffered the most from the crash.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember noticing the difference in their way of living beginning in the early 30s? The same ones kept coming back and living the same way.
Well, I think the same ones kept coming back, but I think they probably had a harder time. Taxes kept going up, and they probably didn't have as many servants as they used to have. I don't think they probably gave as many parties as they used to give. I recall all this from my father talking about the summer people and their activities. I worked summers, 2 summers, at the Casino Theater, which was interesting. And the summer people used to come there on Monday nights. They'd come all dressed up, that was a big night. And then I worked in the box office, which was interesting. You meet all kinds of people. You met all the actors and the actresses.
Tell us a bit about the summer theater at that time.
Well, at that time, they had actors and actresses that came back each summer. There were some there that were there for the whole summer, and then they had the big name actors and actresses would come for one play, or they would come, and then another one would come the following week. But they had plays every week, I think, for maybe 6 weeks during the summer.
Do you remember some of the big names?
No, I don't. There are several that are still on still on TV every once in a while. You see them. My memory isn't that good.
But they did have wonderful New York.
Oh yes, big
cast.
New York cast that would New York actors. Not a whole cast would come, but they would have 1 or 2 big name actors and actresses.
As I remember, there were current plays too that had been in that winter season.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't old repertory.
Oh no, no, they were all. I can, and I can see some of them so clearly. Too. Ruth Huzzy was one that I remembered, and the only reason I remember Ruth is because I went to Pembroke with Ruth, and she was in quite a few big movies later on. This was when she was first starting out, but she later became quite a famous actress. I met her at my 50th reunion this year. First time I'd seen Ruth in 50 years, face to face. And it was fun. It was fun because we were very close friends.
Did you get a good turnout for your 50th?
Marvelous. It was just marvelous. They were, I think there were probably about 200 in my class, and of that, I would say at least 75 came back, which is pretty good. And quite a few of the men, I mean, the men had as good percentage coming back. The biggest thrill I got, and everybody said the same thing, we walked down the hill with the graduates, 50 years, and everybody would call out to us and say, you know, that they didn't think that we could make it, you know, but we did, and it was just wonderful. I mean, I just got such a thrill out of walking down that hill.
No, there's not room for the graduation. Actually takes place inside the church.
Yeah, that does, but no one else can go in there. No, I mean, there's just not room anymore.
Oh, I think that
yeah.
sounds absolutely great. We have covered almost everything I think that we're going to cover. Did the withdrawal of the Navy fleet, you were living here permanently by the time the fleet was sent down to Florida, Virginia, make any difference to you in your life?
No, I don't think, not really. No, I think it was a blow to Newport. I don't think they ever expected that the fleet would ever pull out of here. But it did, and then that's when they started all this tourism.
How do you feel now about the difference between old Thames Street and
I don't like it. I don't like it. Maybe it's because I'm of the age where I loved the old Thames Street. I loved it down there. I loved being able to go down. Oh, the stores used to be open on Saturday nights, and you could go down there and you could see everybody and not be afraid to walk along the streets. Whereas now you don't. I wouldn't go outside my door at night unless I were with someone.
But I don't think that has to do with a change in a specific city. I think that probably is true
everywhere. True. That's true. I think they have improved. I won't say they haven't improved the Thames Street. I think they probably have. But I think they've become too tourist-minded. Pretty soon there won't be a vacant place where you can go down there where you can see the water. Now you could go down the docks, walk down along the docks in the summertime, and see all the boats. There's no place where you can go now. Absolutely none. And if you do, it costs you an arm and a leg to try to get down to park your car anywhere unless you want to walk.
Well, I don't think you're very welcome down at any dock
You're
unless
not.
you're going to one of the restaurants.
You are not. And now they're still trying to build more hotels and condominiums and things down there. I think Newport is just overbuilt. I don't know if anybody else feels that way or
Well,
not, but I know I
it's
do.
still overbuilding, and didn't our new council come in because they are a little bit opposed to this overbuilding?
That's right. Down there, where is it? The shipyard. They they want to build another hotel down there, don't they? Now they were going to try to stop that, but I think now that I don't know. I think somebody has stepped in. They can't. They've been given permission to build there.
The Long Wharf thing seems to have its ups and its downs, and so far they haven't broken ground, I don't believe.
No, they have not. Way down, they have. Way down.
Over the JT's.
No, not over JT's place. No. Now that was the first one they ever talked about there, and that they thought was too much. Well, look what they've built since. That place down the foot of Long Wharf, down the end of Long Wharf there, where they're building.
Leo's last stop.
Leo's last stop. They're building. I don't know. Is it a hotel or I don't know just what it is. It looks terrible anyway. Can't you imagine looking out at all those oil tanks of JT's?
I can't imagine the people having enough money to stay in any of these places that they are building, or buying the condominiums around Brenton Cove.
I know it. I know it.
It's unbelievable the kinds of people that do have that kind of money and want to come to Newport.
How long will it last? I think they've overbuilt there around the drive. There, Brenton's Cove. And they're terrible. Now that was such a pretty sight coming up that hill from Fort Adams. But now you can't see anything. You can't see the water at all.
There have been, I think, two very good redevelopments, and the state has done both of them. I think what they're trying to do to Fort Adams is a great improvement, and I think around the drive at Brenton Point,
Oh,
that is
marvelous. Yes, that is. Otherwise, there'd have been condominiums up there. No, they have done a good job there. And that park, is it a state park on Fort Adams?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it is. Mm-hmm. No, they've done a nice job. They're there. But what I'm talking about, and you're talking about too, are all these condominiums that are going up here and going up there. And now they're trying to build them down the foot of Thames Street there, the old gas company property.
I think they built them, or they've started something.
Have they started down there? I don't know. I haven't been down there so long that I don't go down there very often.
No, it's it's certainly getting overbuilt, and now that Middletown's going to have the same problem.
They
And
are.
They have forgotten about the hurricanes.
Mhm. Oh, down there at the beach. Oh, I think that's the most foolish thing I ever heard in my life. Well, they still haven't gotten approval for that, have we?
I don't know.
No, I don't think they have. I think I have an idea that the neighbors will
If they have
will
enough,
finally,
if
yeah,
they have enough power.
yeah.
But to go back to the hurricanes, though, all of that building that is down there on our waterfront is in a very perilous
Sure it is.
position.
Sure it is. Well, all it needs is one good hurricane, and that's it.
Because you wash out those foundations,
Sure.
and we can be glad we're here on this part of the
Yeah.
Boats Hill. The other redevelopment that has gone on in town, that Broadway redevelopment, have you any feelings about that?
I think they've improved. I think they've improved West Broadway. And it does look a lot better. I think Broadway is beginning to look better. I was ashamed of Broadway. I thought it was just so sad to see all those stores vacant and all falling down. But they've improved that. You just wonder how long it'll last.
What are you feeling about the proposed police station
Oh, I'm all for that
at that point?
at that place there. Yes, I am. I know several people that aren't. My husband, for one, he doesn't think that it should be in that part of town. But I do. I think that's a great place for it. I think it should be right in the middle of town where people can get to it. And they claim that there won't be enough parking, but I think they're going to put parking out in the back. No, I'm all for that. I think.
Usually, when a depressed part of town is redeveloped, it moves the depressed people someplace else. Have you any feeling about what is being done down there in West Broadway?
You mean the better building, the buildings that are going up down there, that have gone up down there?
The tenants that will take these better buildings, do you feel they're the same tenants that...
They were supposed to be. Now, whether they are or not, I don't know. Of course, when you study social history, that's what happens. A place will be improved, and the fringe will become a depressed area. Now, whether that will happen or not, I don't know. Because I think a lot of these people that have gone in down there, I think they've been brought down from Providence, from some of the depressed areas up there, and put in these places. A lot of them I know have out at the projects, autonomy, and what's the name of the other one out there?
And the problem that you had catty corner down here at Eastbourne Lodge would have been the same thing.
Exactly. That was for
elderly
housing.
But subsidized would have been not our own people.
Right.
But brought in. You mentioned having gone to Mumford School for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Mumford?
I haven't
the last
seen
2
it.
or 3 months?
No, I haven't. Has that
It's
changed?
going to be a
That's going to be
residential place, and I think they're doing a very nice job on it.
I haven't seen that. I know they were going to make it. I thought that's not elderly housing.
I think so.
Is it?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Oh, that's one improvement along there.
You mentioned that you were disappointed that so many of the big houses have been turned into small apartments.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's any other solution to it, and it does if they're kept nicely.
Well, if they're kept nicely, I think that's fine, because there are so few neighborhoods anymore, as I remember growing up in them, where there'd be one family to a house. I mean, now there are many families to a house in most instances. But I do agree, they have been improved. That's the only way they can keep their large houses in many instances. This house next door, I think, could be improved upon, but it needs a good coat of paint.
Well, when you realize that there is no possible way that one family anymore can keep some of these Victorian houses that need so much attention all the time. If they can afford that, they can afford something else. Do you like the Newport Bridge better than the ferry?
It's a lot faster. Much faster, but I love the old ferry. I thought that was great.
You didn't have to commute.
I didn't have to commute. You did. That's right. It makes a lot of difference. But the Newport Bridge is certainly where you can whip over there in no time at all, to the tune of $2. But I don't think, now they said when that first was built, the $2 fee would keep many people from Newport. But you sit over there in one of those, in a restaurant, and watch the cars come over, especially over there, right there by the, on the base, in the officers' club there. Their restaurant looks right over onto the bridge.
Steady stream.
Steady stream coming over and back.
Of course, I don't know what proportion of the people use the tokens, and when you go over for $1 with a car full of 5 people, you're much less than the ferry was with the car. Even with the ferry tickets and the passenger tickets that you could use, you couldn't have 5 people go on the ferry for $1.
Oh,
so
you
it's
couldn't?
cheaper. No,
Oh.
no, it's cheaper than the ferry for a car full, for one person.
What was it? Was it so much a car and
It was
and
so
driver?
much a car with the
And
driver,
driver.
and then the passengers
Oh.
were out. And the least you could get it down for 5 people was over $1. So it isn't that expensive.
No, not when you
at
think of
the
it.
dollar.
Yeah.
At the dollar.
Not
At
when
the-
you think of it that way.
At the $2, it is. So, as far as you're concerned, the building of the bridge didn't affect you one way or the other. How do you think it changed Newport?
I don't think it changed it that much. I think it might have brought a few more people in, but I think they probably would have come in anyway. But it just made it easier for them to come in.
Did you ever, as a teenager, use the ferry as just a place to ride back and forth on?
Sure. Sure, that was a fun trip on a Sunday afternoon. You'd get on the ferry for 10 cents and just ride over and don't get off and come back for 10 cents.
And in my memory, behaved.
Oh, of course.
Imagine the teenagers today with their machines and
Yeah, I know.
noise.
I know.
It would be
All
pretty
the
awful.
stereo. Yeah. No, you sat up there in the top and really had a lot of fun going over and back again. And not only that, you walked down. You didn't drive, you walked down. You got on the ferry and you walked home. I used to, when I was going to the beach, when I was in high school, you walked down to Newport Beach and back again. Every day in summertime.
In the first place, the teenagers didn't own their own
That's right.
cars.
And in the second place, your mother or father were not about to drive you down.
Never did
No.
what was done in other later generations.
That's right. Did
No.
you run into that with your children, that you drove them here and drove them there?
I was living in New York City,
Oh. Mm.
but I see my daughter being taxi driver to her now grown children still. In asking you about whether you had ever taken any part of civic affairs, any of the city council projects or the planning board affect you in any way so that you went down to any of the meetings?
Yeah, I think the only thing that affected us was this Eastbourne Lodge over here. And we did go down to protest that. I think your husband got everybody in the neighborhood to go down to that.
That was a very interesting neighborhood reaction. There were people that reacted many blocks away and were generous in donating toward that legal. That's really the only thorough neighborhood community feeling that I have ever experienced in this area.
I think Bill started it, really.
He was pretty horrified by it, and now won't do anything about the wall. Doesn't want to stir up sleeping dogs. I think it's a
Well, you know that wall, they did try here last year, and they painted it all over beautifully.
Yes, 2 or 3 times.
You'd look out the next morning, I remember. And did you ever see anybody
You ever
painting
seen them?
on there?
I would collar them, what a picture, and I would certainly collar them and really take them down to the police.
But I think that would be so much better if they just pull that whole wall down.
I want it pulled down, definitely, but the neighbors don't. Helen, are you interested in the America's Cup when it was here?
Oh, I thought it was great to see it. I thought it was great to see all those beautiful yachts around.
Do you
But,
remember
we-
when the earliest recollection of it?
Of America's Cup?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when it first came, it was before the redevelopment down on Thames Street.
Well, I was thinking way back, there were times that it wasn't, but it did start.
Oh, you mean the real old J-boat?
Yes. When did they
Oh, heavens,
start?
that was...
I don't remember anything about them.
That was in the early 30s, I would think. because I remember going out on the New York boat to see the races. Not that you could see them, but it was fun to go out to see the races. And those were the old J-boats.
And then there was a
But,
time that there were no races?
Oh yes.
During the war?
During the war there were no races. I don't know when they brought them back with the 12 meters. I don't remember. But that was probably in the 70s, late 60s.
Oh, I think
During
it was.
the 60s.
It must have been the late 50s.
Yeah, maybe it could have been. Because I know in the summertime, I know my husband wasn't here, and I would take my children down, and we'd walk along the docks to see all the yachts that were in. But it was nothing like it is now, with all the town just jammed with people. You couldn't get down on Thames Street. So I was sorry to see it taken to Australia, really.
And you're
Whether
not going over.
I don't think I will go over. Are you?
I've been to the East Coast, and I'm not going to go to the West Coast
Yeah.
of Australia. I didn't think that.
We never went out to see the races. We used to go over to Port Adams and watch the boats go out. And it's, when during the races. But other than that, no.
I don't think it's going to make very much difference in the great tourist influx. I think they're going to come
think
anyway.
so. I think they'll come anyway. I think the people that came weren't interested in the races.
You can't see them.
You can't see them anyway.
Have you any reminiscences you think that historians would like to hear about that I haven't asked you about? You will remember just as soon as we cut the tape off all the things that you didn't talk about.
I don't remember, Emily. Things that I don't know of anything that would be that interesting, really.
Well, if you do come upon some wonderful reminiscence, we can always start another tape. I thank you ever and ever so much. You've been a great narrator.
Oh, I